I Am Legend could have been, well, legendary. But even Will Smith, vampire hordes, and a superior alternate ending couldn't save this adaptation from itself. When a movie is based on a popular book, it's inevitable that comparisons will be made. Unfortunately for 2007's I Am Legend, a ton of changes were made from the source material. Notably, the ending of the Will Smith horror film only served to water down the themes of the 1954 book. Many believe that Richard Matheson wrote one of the most memorable, intense, and thought-provoking endings of all time, which the movie scrapped completely. In spite of everything, the first two-thirds of I Am Legend are pretty great. The film manages to maintain the same sense of dread and loneliness found in Matheson's novel. In the book, the character of Robert Neville has been going a little crazy as a result of being completely on his own for so long, and Will Smith nails his performance. The movie also makes a smart choice of giving Neville a dog from the very beginning, rather than having him slowly befriending it as he does in the book. After all, the movie only has a limited amount of time to develop Neville's relationship with his dog before the animal inevitably dies. However, there were some questionable choices from the very beginning. The first was the decision to depersonify the vampires. In the book, the vampires can talk, and they use their speech to try to coax Neville out of his home each night. Conversely, the movie's vampires just thrash around and let out animalistic screams. Both versions are terrifying, but the book's depiction is more interesting because its monsters are clearly intelligent and, as a result, are more sympathetic. However, the far bigger red flag was the introduction of Anna. As soon as Anna and a young child named Ethan appear in the film, it's clear that the two characters are kind and trustworthy people. They plan to travel up to a survivors' camp in Vermont, which the movie would later confirm is real.
Come with us, Neville. To the colony.
In the book, however, Anna and Ethan don't exist. Instead, a woman named Ruth shows up nearly two-thirds of the way through the novel, and Neville instantly suspects her of being one of the vampires. Their relationship is tense, but slowly turns romantic, until Neville convinces her to let him test her blood. She knocks him out before he can look at the results and runs away, but not before leaving a note explaining that yes, she is in fact a vampire. As it turns out, there are two types of vampires in the novel. There are those who died when they were infected and turned into vampires afterward, and those who stayed alive the whole time. The former are violent and irrational, but the latter are still as smart as regular humans and have built a new society together. But because Neville didn't know, he's been killing both types of vampires indiscriminately throughout the novel, and one of those vampires was Ruth's husband. The book ends with Neville being captured by the living vampires and sentenced to death for his crimes against them. He realizes that from their perspective, he was the monster terrorizing them in the middle of the night. The movie version of I Am Legend concludes Neville's character arc by having him heroically blow himself up to kill all the vampires trying to break into his lab. This allows Anna and Ethan to escape and bring the cure to the survivors' camp. The movie ends with Anna giving a monologue about how Neville saved humanity.
We are his legacy. This is his legend.
The book's ending is haunting not just because it ends with the hero's death, but because he dies with the realization that he was never really the hero in the first place. He spent the whole book killing living, sentient creatures capable of kindness and rational thought, and dies with the understanding that the last few years of his life were spent pursuing a pointless goal. There was no hope of rebuilding human society because humans were no longer the dominant species on Earth. The world had moved beyond humans, and that wasn't even necessarily a bad thing. In comparison, the movie presents a lot less moral ambiguity. Neville's worldview isn't challenged in the same meaningful way. He gets to be the lone hero he sees himself as throughout the film, with little subversion or doubt. The new society being formed is made up of regular humans who would learn to think of Neville as their savior. And despite suggestions that the vampires are more intelligent than rabid animals, in the end, they're just monsters that need to die. The movie changes so much from the book, which begs the question, why'd they even bother adapting I Am Legend in the first place? Why not just create an original vampire film instead? This is why many viewers point to the movie's alternate ending as being superior. In the alternate ending, one of the vampires trying to break into Neville's lab makes a butterfly symbol on the glass. This leads Neville to realize he's referencing the butterfly tattoo on his test subject's neck. He opens the door and returns the test subject to the main vampire, who appears to be her partner. Even though the monsters could easily kill him, they decide to forgive Neville and leave him alone. Much like his counterpart in the novel, Neville realizes that he's a monster in the eyes of these creatures. These are sentient beings who know he's been killing and kidnapping their friends and family. And even though they think he's a monster, they still show him compassion and spare his life, which is more than he ever did for them. Although the alternate ending still lacks the gut punch of the book's finale, it's thematically much closer to the original. Sadly, the theatrical ending is disappointing in comparison, as the filmmakers seemingly went for the safer option, and the whole film suffers for it.